course, ACC306. I'm very optimistic that this course we're going to conclude with it this week, and by next week we can take some other course. But this being said, let's go straight into it. Now, I'm going to take our very from what's called the production overhead 306. All right, we have production overhead. Now, these are two different words: the production and overhead. Now, what do we intend to achieve in the course of this discussion, because of this class? One thing we need to understand here is that we need to understand what it means by production overhead. And why is there overhead when it comes to production? Very nice question. Now, you know, when we say overhead, let's take one step at a time. When we say production, right, is that process that involves the transformation of raw materials into finished goods. Right? Raw materials could be anything. It could be human raw materials, it could be natural raw materials. It all depends on what you're intending to produce. Right? But that process that involves you get this raw material and converting them to finished goods that you are going to use to solve certain problems or offer as goods or services and get something in return. Right? That process is what we call production. But you know, when we talk about overhead, when we say overhead, we are simply talking about all those things involved, all right, all those necessary expenses, necessary costs like rent, heat, electricity, telephone, all these things put together that you use when it comes to production. Then we have all those as overhead. Okay, now let's now put these two together: production overhead. Production overhead is referred to as, all right, the indirect expenditures. All right, they do not, that they are not raw materials. All right, expenses. All right, and the cost of materials, they are direct. They are directly involved. But when we talk about, probably you needed to call the driver, all right, bringing your raw materials. All those ones are referred to as, all right, the indirect expenses or costs. So all these indirect expenses or costs, all these indirect expenditures incurred during the process of production, all right, we refer to them as production overhead. And this overhead consists of three elements. All right, three elements. We have the likes of the, all right, indirect materials, labor, and expenses. Indirect material, indirect labor, and indirect expenses. Okay, so we have that as that. Are we all on the same page? Are we all on the same page? Now, when we say indirect materials, what are we referring to? We are simply referring to the materials used in the course of manufacturing, which either cannot be traced as part of the product, like what I said earlier, or which are too small in value to be conveniently measured. So indirect materials are those materials that you use, all right, that are not directly involved in the production of a particular product. All right, the same thing goes for labor, the same thing goes for expenditure. And a good example of indirect material, let's say, for example, you are a company producing vehicles. Definitely, there are some of the things you need to use in cleaning your tools on your machine. All right. So if you are considering the cost of production of the particular vehicle, you don't want to add the cost of purchasing, right? The cost of purchasing liquid soap for cleaning your utensils. All right. Although it's important, but it's almost insignificant and it's not even directly involved in the production of the vehicle. Are we together? So that's a good example of indirect materials. All right. Just like we have dustbins, we have soap, we have oil for greasing. They also have indirect labor. All right. indirect labor is the cost of, are we on the same page? Okay, just a moment. Just a moment. Trying to. Okay, I think we are good to go now. Okay, now the same thing goes for indirect labor. All right, any labor that is not directly, all right, fixed or that is not directly involved with the production, all right, of the product, it's otherwise known as, it falls under that category as indirect labor. All right, just we have the likes of inspection, all right, supervision, when you are paid to inspect, all right, when you have your inspector or your supervisors, all right, then we have that as indirect labor as well. All right, I believe you all can get network is pretty unstable from my end. Okay, just a moment. Okay, now let's continue. So now, just like we talked about indirect, okay, just we talked about indirect labor, okay, talked about indirect labor in that material. All right, all these are, they are all right, necessary to understand as they do not directly get involved with production. The likes of, so we have this likes of soap, all right, the likes of oil for greasing. So you have likes of supervision, all right, we have likes of supervision or supervisors, all right, or transportation. Okay, all this falls under, okay, it falls under what we are talking about here. Are we all on the same page? Okay, so now let's continue. Okay, so now, like I was saying, all this this falls under this department. Okay, now just like we have indirect expenses, the likes of uh, power, all right, like electricity. Okay, so we have that as that. So very quickly, we also have what we call the selling overhead. Okay, the selling overhead is a classification that comprises of costs incurred, all right, in securing orders from customers for product dealt in, all right, by the concern. All right, these are every expenses that you cannot attach directly to your selling. You know what it means by selling? Get your product out there for your customer to be able to purchase, all right, to be able to purchase them. All right, talking about sample, all right, sample display, all right, that's all this has to do with your selling overhead and that as that. You also have the distribution overhead. This consists of all expenses incurred in handling the product from the time it was completed in the work units, all right, till it reached its destination, distribution, getting it from where it was produced to where it is needed. Every cost, all right, incurred. So we have that as that. So now, very quickly, I want us to quickly walk through this together. All right. All right. So we have what we call um, examples of expenditure. All right. We have likes of warehouse and wages and salaries and parking cases. These are all the types of expenditure, money you spend, all right, on ensuring that your production goes wonderfully well. All right. So there's something I want us to quickly consider tonight. Um, I want us to really look at a sample of what a trading, all right, and trading, profit and loss account of an organization looks like, all right, what it um, looks like, the trading, profit and loss account, all right, of an organization, what it looks like, all right. And speaking of which, I would have loved us to do this in our next class that we'll have enough time, all right. So I'm going to highlight this. So I'm going to very first thing I'm going to do in our next class is to draft this out and specify certain things that are expected to be on this account. All right. And in our next class, we talk about the costing, all right, the method of cost accounting, and also do a sample of what it looks like, all right, of what a company's trading profit and loss account should look like. All right. So thank you very much, everyone. I believe you've been able to get something in this class. Few more classes we should call in around this course, and we're going to be taking some other course subsequently. Do have a wonderful